at first.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree just our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the results of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. Call off the roll.
Mr. Jamieson, Mr. Hales, Mr. Noel Lewin Jr., Mr. Wallen, Ms. Stewart, Mr. Lindo, Mr. Joseph Smith, Ms. Brianna Edwards, Mr. Brown, Mr. Jamil Brown, Ms. Burson, Mr. Lake, Ms. Perry, Ms. Ruth Ann Perry, Mr. Malcolm,
Present.
Ms. Houghton, Mr. Skeen, Mr. Henry, Ms. Robinson Clark, Nakinsky Robinson, Ms. Sheik Perkinson, Mrs. Sheik Perkinsons, Ms. Howell, Mr. Walters, Mr. Isaacs, Mr. Williams, Dwayne Williams, Ms. Moore, Ms. Williams Reynaud, Ms. Scarlett, Mr. Perry, Ms. Doyley, Ms. Morris, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Bennett, Ms. Houghton, DeAndre Houghton, Ms. Godfrey, Mr. Bell, Ms. Gervan, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Crossman, Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Balfour, Ms. Martin,
Present.
Ms. Blair, Mr. Brown, Brad, Mr. Cooper, Javier, Mr. Johnson, Javon, Mr. Foster, Roberto, Ms. Hyman, Mr. White, Mr. Headley, Mr. Morans, Ms. Richards, Ms. Malcolm, Mr. Malcolm,
Present.
Mr. Robinson, Tremoy, Mr. Gale, Mr. Scott, Mr. Shackford, Ms. Silburn, Mr. Fowler, Mr. Llewellyn, Ms. Pascoe, Ms. McIntosh, Ms. Coleman, Ms. Gray, Ms. Graydon, Mr. Foster, Dion, Mr. Hanson, Ms. Walters, Mr. Halsam, Mr. Williams, Jason, Ms. Clark, Moya, Mr. Reed, Mr. Harris, Ms. Morrison, Ms. Green Carter, Ms. Salmon, Ms. Williams, Rihanna, and Mr. Collins.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of the sitting to enable us to hear remarks and greetings from parliamentary and other representatives.
The question is that the sitting be suspended to enable us to hear remarks and greetings from parliamentary and other representatives. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I now welcome Ms. Valerie A. Curtis, CD, BH, M, JP, Clerk to the Houses.
Senator, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, OJCD, KC, JP, President of the Senate, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Favour Williams, MP, Minister of Education and Youth, Mr. Robert Miller, MP, Senator Gabriela Morris, Senior Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Entertainment, Ms. Yannick Tracy and Mr. Orville Levy, Co-Chairs, National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, members of the 13th National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, members of staff of the Houses of Parliament and the Ministry of Education and Youth, members of the media, distinguished guests, a warm welcome to you all. Today, we have gathered to observe the 13th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica under the theme, Reignited, Empowering Youth for Jamaica 60 and beyond. This special sitting was first observed in November 2003 as part of the National Youth Month activities. I applaud the visionaries of the National Center for Youth Development, now renamed the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division of the then Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. The development and growth of a healthy democracy is in tune with good governance, and the rule of law must be the business and duty of every well-thinking Jamaican. Our youth should be afforded an opportunity for involvement, to have their voices heard on matters that are pertinent to them at local and national levels of government. They should be encouraged and empowered to become active contributors to their own development and to be assets to their communities and spaces of influence. This, I believe, is what the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica has been working at for these 13 years. I congratulate the division on its many successes. The work you have done has contributed significantly to equipping and positioning a great number of our young people in carrying the mantle of change that Jamaica strives for. As we continue our Diamond Jubilee celebrations of independence, we must remember the sacrifices of our people who have gone on before us and the legacy we have inherited. This reflection must prompt us to desire what is best for our country and for us to work together to create a good future for those who will come after us. As clerk to the Houses of Parliament, it is my pleasure to welcome this year's youth parliamentarians to Gordon House, the Parliament. I implore you, youth parliamentarians, to use your voice responsibly in your various speeches of influence, to promote messages that are positive and healthy for the good of all Jamaica. I share the sentiments of the late Nelson Mandela, who said, "In a world that so often decries the apathy of its youth, we can open our arms for the millions of adolescents eager to contribute their new ideas and bounding enthusiasm." Therefore, I look forward to your presentations on financial literacy, affordable physical well-being, and parenting and good education. Thank you, and feel very much at home today.
Thank you, Ms. Valerie A. Curtis. I now welcome Ms. Yanni Tracy and Mr. Orville Levy, co-chairs of the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, specially invited guests, youth members of Parliament joining us here and online, to our Minister of Education, Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, and Speaker of the House, Ms. Marissa Dalbert Filbert, to the Clerk of House, good morning.
It is our distinctive privilege to bring greetings to you on behalf of the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica to this 13th sitting of the National Youth Parliament. As technical coordinators of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, we are proud of the work you've done during this year's Youth Parliament. Give yourself a... You have navigated the streets of your constituencies with a reignited energy to bring change. We want to use this opportunity to thank you for your commitment and service to the nation's youth through your representation. As you present on the motions today, under the thematic areas of financial literacy and underemployment, affordable housing and finance, psychological well-being, and parenting and education, we know you may be anxious. But people, let's recall Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You are doing great work, and an amazing work to say up to date, and I'm really and truly proud of your advances. Thank you for playing your part in advancing the work for creating ideal Jamaica. You can rest assured, knowing the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica will work assiduously to table your recommendation in position papers and hold the government to account for the implementation of these here solutions.
To our policymakers, NGOs, private sector groups here with us today, we urge you to give ear to the solutions being presented here today. The challenges being faced and the solutions formulated by our youth member of parliament are not hypothetical. Each member of parliament was mandated to go out into the streets within their respective constituencies, speak to the young persons there, and formulate projects and programmatic actions to address their issues. Our mandate as the Youth Advisory Council is to ensure that youths are made equal and valuable partners through their full participation in the decision-making process. Here are the reignited youth. They are participating and require your help to keep that flame alive. Let us remove the tokenistic approaches to youth leadership and recognize that youth are not ill-experienced, but are true change makers and innovative thinkers. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division within the Ministry of Education and Youth, the Houses of Parliament, our workshop facilitators, for helping our YMPs to create the session that we have today. Thank you. We would like to give special acknowledgement to the National Youth Advisory Council county co-chairs who have worked tirelessly with our youth parliamentarians on their consultations, their county projects, their parliamentary preparation, and of course, mentorship. From Cornwall, we have Miss Alicia Henry. Middlesex, we have Miss Angeli Henry Fennell. And we also have Mr. Jovan Mowat. From Surrey, we have Mr. Andrew Johnson and Dr. Tony Anmondo. Youths, let us continue to play our part in making Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. We thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy and Mr. Levy. I now welcome Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, OJCD KCJP, President of the Senate.
I must say that if it's one thing that you have learned how to do quickly is to beat the decks. That is really an important requirement for all members of parliament, especially those of you sitting on the back bench. Because when the front bench is speaking and you're not beating the desk, they look up like this and you have to beat desk. So you have learned that very well. Good morning all. The Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Fable Williams, Member of Parliament and Minister of Education and Youth, the Honorable Robert Miller, Member of Parliament for St. Catherine South East. He is the fellow sitting right behind me here. You recognize him? Stand up, how many people? See that? Beat the decks for him. Ms. Yannick Tracy and Mr. Aubrey Levy, co-chairs of the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, members of the 13th National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, members of the staff of the House of Parliament and the Ministry of Education and Youth. And I think that the persons who have been coordinating with the staff of Gordon House would have recognized that they are highly efficient and professional. So I give them a particular greeting this morning. Members of the media, distinguished guests, and I noticed that there are some students in the gallery. A warm welcome to you all. First of all, I indicate to you that I bring greetings to you this morning, all of you, and to your endeavor from the Honorable Senate of Jamaica. And I'm sure that you have recognized the distinction to be made between the House of Representatives, which is presided over Honorable Speaker Dalrymple, and the Senate, over which I preside. The Senate, as you know, is a body of review. So we work in tandem, that is to say, the Senate and the House of Representatives works in tandem to ensure that laws that are passed in Jamaica are laws which reflect or seek the best interest of everybody in Jamaica. You also would have heard that there is much debate now about whether or not Jamaica should embark on the exercise of eventually becoming a republic. And one of the things that we are going to have to look at is the role of the Senate, because it is very current today that the Senate, you may ask yourself, comprises of 8 persons appointed by the leader of the opposition, whoever that is, and 13 appointed by the Prime Minister, whoever that is. That body really roughly represents what the House of Lords in England is or used to be, and is meant to be a review chamber. So, although the 2 million people are thereabouts on the voters list in Jamaica goes to the poll and elects a House of Representatives, the unelected Senate has the capacity to reject legislation coming from the lower house. And you might ask yourself the question, but how is that possible? It is possible because it is a hangover of what they refer to as the Westminster system, to which we ascribe. Now, 111 years ago, the House of Lords that the Senate is modeled after lost the right to review legislation of elected members of Parliament. And we still have that in Jamaica. And you might consider to yourself that that is most awkward, because the people go to the polls, elect a government, and unelected persons can veto legislation coming from the lower house. But I say this not to say that that is unconstitutional. Indeed, that is what the Constitution of Jamaica says is to happen. And I'm not being contentious, so I'm not referring to anything specific. But that is the state of affairs that we find ourselves in. Now, hopefully, when it is that we meet again as a youth parliament, we will be able to say that some progress has been made towards the constitutional changes that we need to make to bring Jamaica as an independent country into the modern era of Jamaica that all of you, of young people, can feel proud to be a part of. That is where you usually beat the desk. So you have a lot to contemplate, and we as Jamaicans have a lot to contemplate. But don't fall into the trap to believe that the country has not made any progress. Don't believe it when people say, why Jamaica is a backward place, we can't even bother, don't even know if I intend to really live inside this place. Don't fall for that. Because when we became independent in 1963, that is not a very long time ago, you know. When we became independent in 1963, a good proportion of the people of Jamaica were living in Watland, Durban. We do not even know our names, sir. A good proportion of the people were living below all form of international statistics that say how human beings should live. So we have made significant progress. So don't fall for the notion that Jamaica not going on with nothing. We have made some progress, but we need more. And we need it rapidly. And that is why this forum is very important. Right? We can tell you about the history. I can tell you about the history of the country and the parliament. What I cannot tell you about is the future of the country, because that rests with you. And what you are being groomed in here, and I must say that I really appreciate the fact that I recognize a number of you from other fora that I've spoken in. But what is very important here is that you are being groomed to understand the importance of democracy and respecting the views of others. Because without that basic foundation of the democratic process, we as a country will not survive. And in that regard, we also have a very happy experience to report. And that is why I say sometimes we are very hard on ourselves in Jamaica. Because when Jamaica is having election, winning the last local government election is one vote. One, can I use the word? One dege vote in one division caused the local government administration to change. You had seats that won or lost by 2 and 3 votes, 5 votes. There was not one complaint publicly or in the parliament or in the court contesting the election. Americans always tell us how to operate democracy. Them go all over the world and tell people how to operate democracy, you know. And them still can't work out for them 2020 election. So we have a lot to be proud of. And I'm going to tell you another example too. And notice that I'm not reading the speech that they give me to read, you know. So when I finish here, they're going to carry me around the back and curse me out. I'm going to tell you something else too. And maybe you don't know. In 1983, before most of you were born, one political party did not contest an election. So therefore, there were 60 members of Parliament for one side in this House. The then Prime Minister did not seek to take advantage of that because he could have. What he did was to appoint a Senate of independent persons to act as the opposition. And that was Prime Minister Seaga. So we have a lot to be proud of in this country. And I can tell you, I can speak for the Speaker. I cannot speak for Mr. Miller because he's born after independence. But I can speak for the Minister, I think, although maybe not. Yeah, you're born after, before independence or after? Look here, I think she born before independence, but she look like she born after. We are very proud of you guys. And as I said, and I'm going to take my seat. I'm not sitting yet, so don't come over here. I'm going to take my seat now and just repeat something that I said. We can tell you about the past. We can point to you the dangers and the signposts of things that happened in the past. Hear me good enough. We can tell you about the past and point lessons to you, point out lessons to you, but none of us here can tell you about the future. That rests with you.
Thank you, Senator. I now welcome the Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Filbert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Members and the President said born after independence. Senator, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate, the Honorable Faval Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, Senator Gabriela Morris, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Entertainment, the Member of Parliament from St. Catherine Southeastern, Mr. Robert Miller, Ms. Yanni Tracy and Mr. Orville Levy, co-chairs, National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, members of the 13th National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, staff to the Houses of Parliament and the Ministry of Education and Youth, led by the very able clerk to the Houses of Parliament, Ms. Valerie Curtis, members of the media, distinguished guests, persons joining us in the gallery. A pleasant good morning to everyone. I'm honored today to bring greetings on behalf of the House of Representatives to this, the 13th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. This year's theme, Reignited, Empowering Youth for Jamaica 60 and Beyond, reminds us all that while it is important for us to recognize the numerous achievements we have made as a country throughout our 60 years of independence, we must not rest on our laurels. It reminds us that this year, this time, is a perfect juncture to prepare ourselves to confront the challenges of the future. The theme highlights the fact that in order to reignite our nation for greatness, we must empower you, the youth of this country. The National Youth Parliament of Jamaica is a testament to the shared commitment of the Parliament and the Ministry of Education and Youth to empowering youth and specifically to equipping them for leadership. At the heart of leadership is service. And as parliamentarians, we are leaders called to a life of service. Service to our communities and service to our nation form the bedrock of parliamentary life. You, who have volunteered to become youth parliamentarians, have answered the call to serve the youth of Jamaica by bringing issues that matter to you, the issues that affect your daily lives, to confront that of public thought. You have been active in your communities, deploying projects that will equip other youth to contribute to their own self-development and ultimately the development of our nation. I therefore this morning take this opportunity to thank you for taking the step in service to your fellow citizens. I would like also to thank the persons who worked behind the scenes to organize this event, and I really want to thank you, our very special guests, for being here today. I wish for you all the best for today's meeting and look forward to hearing the proposals you will make during this sitting.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now welcome Senator Gabriela Morris, Opposition Spokesperson, Youth and Sport.
Speaker of the House, the Honorable Marissa Dalrymple-Filbert, President of the Senate, the Honorable Tom Tavares Finson, Minister of Education, the Honorable Favour Williams, MP Robert Miller, President or co-chairs of the National Youth Council, representatives of the Ministry of Education, specially invited guests, clerk to the Houses of Parliament, staff of the Houses of Parliament, members of the media, and to you, youth parliamentarians, I bid a special good morning. This morning, I want to underscore what an immense privilege it is to bring greetings and to share in this, the 13th sitting, lucky 13, of the National Youth Parliament. My message to you this morning is very simple. I didn't even need a speech. And what I want to encourage you to do, both in this Parliament and outside the walls of this Parliament, is to contemplate and activate change. This experience is bringing you one step closer to what I hope will be a lifetime of service to this country, Jamaica. And I want to encourage you to use your seat, to use your platform, to bring forward change that will impact this country. I want to encourage you to use your seat to activate and reignite the hearts of young people across Jamaica. Because our generation has been chided for high levels of apathy. But as we forge forward into another 60 years, and I heard the President of the Senate give you the rundown of the early days of his career as a politician, you too have a responsibility to chart the way into the future. You have a responsibility to actively participate and to propose solutions to the plethora of challenges that we face, not just here in Jamaica, but across the world. And so I want to encourage you to collectively, because far too often as young people, we decide on doing it all alone. And it is said that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so I invite you, I encourage you to start a journey, or continue rather, on a journey of table shaking, of ceiling breaking, of change making, and ensure that now more than ever, young people across Jamaica are ready to participate and make a difference. In closing, I want to send a nudge to my colleagues, and I'm happy that MP Miller is also here. Because when young people talk, we want to be heard. We want to be heard. And I know that some very beneficial proposals will come out of this sitting today. And Madam and Mr. Co-Chair, I hope and I look forward to these motions becoming green papers, so that these solutions that you have worked so hard on putting together can be implemented to truly make Jamaica the place that we want to live, work, raise families, and do business. Because it is not enough for us just to talk. In 2022, youth are not just the future, but we're the here and now. And so, Mr. President, well, he left. Madam Speaker, we must ensure that the proposals from these young people today, they become not just proposals, but actionable items that can enrich our country. And I look forward to us doing that. So today I want to close by saying I know this is a very anxious moment for some people, but trust that you have my support. Trust that you are here for a purpose, and trust that your role in this country is not undervalued. We see you, we appreciate you, and I want to encourage you to continue on this journey of excellence and service. I look forward in the near future to many of you joining me in this place so that we can move our country forward. I want to wish you all the best for today. I want to wish you a magnificent sitting. And I want to say, keep doing the hard but good work. All the best.
Thank you, Senator. I now welcome Honorable Fayval Williams, MP, Minister of Education and Youth.
Thank you so much. REIGNITED, empowering youth for Jamaica 60 and beyond. Let me begin by acknowledging the Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CDMP, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and our second female speaker out of 15 speakers in this House. I think she deserves a round of applause. Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate, Mrs. Valerie Curtis, Clerk to the Houses, Ms. Yannick Tracy, Mr. Orville Levy, co-chairs, National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica. We also have in the Parliament this morning MP Robert Miller, MP from St. Catherine Southeast. Welcome, MP Miller, to this, the 15th sitting. Let me acknowledge as well all the members of the Youth Advisory Council, all our young parliamentarians who are here this morning, let me acknowledge you. Those who are watching online and in the gallery, welcome students, ladies and gentlemen, all, good morning. It is my pleasure once again to be able to share in a sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. A youth parliament that is sitting at a time in our history when we have 18 women in the Houses of Parliament, the highest ever. The first time females represent or stand at about 29% of the Houses of Parliament. And I think this is a good point at which we are in the country, and we can only build on that going forward. Let me extend welcome and heartiest congratulations to you, the 70 participants who were selected after a vigorous assessment and interview process. I see in each of you the hopes and dreams of all Jamaicans, which is to be able to fulfill on our potential to make Jamaica a developed nation by 2030, 8 years from now. Your participation in training sessions coordinated by the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division of the Ministry of Education and Youth, the team at the Houses of Parliament, Mr. Ricardo Brooks, Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network, Jamaica Association for Debating, and the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica have no doubt better prepared you for today's sitting and future engagements. I'm also pleased that this activity has been a regular part of Youth Month, in which we pay special attention to and highlight the various avenues and opportunities for you, our young people, to participate in national development. As you know, the Youth Parliament program is designed to expose potential future young parliamentarians the fundamentals of how Parliament works, how legislation is drafted and finalized, to debate matters of national and international concern, to make use of committees, and to make and enforce their own rules of conduct, practice, and behavior. To this end, your training included focus areas such as presentation on the School Nutrition Policy Green Paper being shepherded by the Ministry of Education and Youth, overview of the National Youth Policy, the policy process, introduction to Jamaica's Parliament, parliamentary procedures, debating techniques, speech development, preparation, public speaking and communication, research strategies. The hope is that this will enable you to develop a better appreciation of good governance. It will also help you as participants to appreciate the skills that are required for sound debate and other aspects of the legislative process. This program, therefore, offers you an opportunity to experience in a real way, beyond television images and other media reports, the functioning of one of the country's key institutions which underpin democracy and good governance. I note that for this year, guided by Parliamentary Oversight Committee of the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, youth parliamentarians were placed in constituencies and encouraged to work collaboratively to undertake projects within their country. A project proposal guide was developed and shared to assist in this regard. Project proposals were submitted to the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica and the Ministry for review and approval. I note too that today's sitting is a return to face-to-face modality in light of the current relaxation of the COVID-19 protocols and social distancing guidelines, and that the topics on which you will speak today include affordable housing and squatting, financial literacy, parenting and education, and I'm particularly interested in hearing your recommendations, because you know good parenting is a missing link in many homes and something that the ministry has been particularly concerned about, and we have an entity at the Ministry of Education and Youth, the National Parenting Support Commission, that has been working hard to ensure that in our homes all across Jamaica we have an appreciation for good parenting. You'll also be debating youth psychological well-being and mental health. Congratulations on your interest in this aspect of national life, your commitment to training, and the keen interest and diligence you have shown readily recommended you for selection. Your participation is welcome departure from those who stay on the sidelines as critics, but will not make the effort to learn about the legislative process and how they can effect positive changes. I know that we are a government that listens to our young people. We are the government that established the Youth Parliament. We are the government that established the Youth Advisory Group, and so we take our young people serious. We take your thoughts, your comments, your goals and aspirations very serious, and that's why we're here and continue to be here today in this Parliament to hear from you, not just here, but in other forums. I encourage each of you to participate fully. I therefore wish you all a very successful sitting of this year's National Youth Parliament, and wish I could stay for the entire day, but unfortunately today's Monday, and it's also Cabinet, which I am missing right now, but I just had to be here to bring you remarks and to wish you well, and to let you know that you will not just be speaking into thin air. We will take your recommendations seriously at the Ministry of Education and Youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Statements by ministers, announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Report from the Youth Parliament County of Cornwall project titled Business Over Badness. Report from the Youth Parliament County of Middlesex County project titled Document Outreach and Coordination for the Underserved Program, DOCOPS. Report from the Youth Parliament County of Surrey project titled Virtual Job Interview Seminar.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. Honorable Sharika Cheek Perkins, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, whereas the lack of affordable housing solution for low-income households has resulted in the exponential increase of squatter settlements in Jamaica. And whereas approximately 20% of the Jamaican population live in squatter settlements across the island. Be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica debate policies and solutions to address the issue of squatting in the country. Be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commit to making recommendations in this debate to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation for consideration and action. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Mr. Daniel Campbell, Leader of the Opposition Business.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice at the next meeting of the House. I will move, whereas the attendance rate of parents to parent-teachers meetings at most schools stands at 20 to 30%, with a gradual and consistent decline, and whereas low parental involvement has resulted in low academic performance, depression, and low self-esteem, and can cause students to become susceptible to criminal behavior. Be it resolved, the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2022 debates strategies and policies to alleviate the constraints of subsequent limitations to parental involvement in schools. Be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commits to making recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Education and Youth for the government to consider and develop necessary policies to effect implementation. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Honorable Joseph Sangster Smith, Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce.
From this debate to the Ministry of Education and Youth and the Ministry of Finance and Public Service for consideration and action. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Honorable Nakinsky Robinson, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, whereas social stigma is fueled by a lack of knowledge surrounding mental health and continues to hinder Jamaicans from seeking mental health services, and whereas youth are faced with a lack of social interventions to cope with societal stressors and behavioral issues and drug abuse and suicidal ideation have provided an undesirable and unsafe alternative. Be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica discusses strategies to mitigate the short, medium, and long-term implications on Jamaicans seeking these essential services. And be it further resolved, the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commit to making recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Ministry of Education and Youth for consideration and action. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable the members to take the motion, notice of which they gave earlier.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the members to take the motions, notice of which they gave earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Cheek Perkins.
Madam Speaker, my government colleagues, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. Decent affordable housing should be the basic right for citizens in this country. The reason is simple. Matthew 12:25, a household divided amongst itself cannot stand. In other words, some can have houses and some have none. Let's also look at the National Housing Trust. They give low-income housing for $2.5 million. You and I know that can barely buy land. This government going forward intends to fix that. Also, let's look at the Housing Agency of Jamaica. Let's look at the Housing Agency of Jamaica. They are mandated to do land regularization and also do low-income housing. The lowest house ever sold by them cost approximately $3.2 million, leaving the low-income earners at a deficit of $700,000 to $4.5 million, taking into consideration the new St. Catherine housing development. Madam Speaker, it is for this reason we in Jamaica need to extend our arms and expand our creativity to embrace modern and innovative construction methods to adjust the housing crisis in affordable housing. Madam Speaker, Black and Steel, stop keep. It is time for new and affordable solutions. We must begin as a country to implement methods of housing construction with well-designed and treated intermodal container homes. Let me repeat that again. Intermodal container homes. These are cost-effective, durable, and can be retrofitted to suit the needs of our low to middle-income earners. According to the Kingston Logistics Center, the overall cost of a project using the new standard 40-foot container is approximately $2.5 million Jamaican dollars. That accommodates a complete one-bedroom and a studio home, inclusive of insulation, treatment, cladding, transportation, and foundation. Madam Speaker, I am also happy to report to the House that this housing solution can be adapted to suit our temperature and our climate, as it works well in countries like Australia with similar climatic zone to ours. Now, considering its vast surplus of 20 billion Jamaican dollar, the NHT could quickly and efficiently replicate this model of low-income houses across the country. Madam Speaker, this government will fix it. Madam Speaker, the proposal could go a far way in tackling the surge of unaffordable housing. We are giving people the comfortable, modern, and innovative housing solutions. This government will fix it. Ladies and gentlemen, let's assess the housing solutions according to the containerhome.org. An old standard 40-foot container saves 49% in cost comparison to a new one. Therefore, the overall cost of a project using an old standard container is approximately $1.3 million. Let's look at the St. Catherine Estate. A duplex unit for a one-bedroom house varies from 237 to 367 square feet, a structure some Jamaicans refer to as matches box, while having a 40-foot container costing approximately $1.3 to $2.5 million. Less than the $7 million house that are given to low-income earners now. Madam Speaker, we are innovating. Madam Speaker, we are changing. Madam Speaker, we are revolutionizing housing in Jamaica. This government will fix it. Ladies and gentlemen, the scale of the challenge we face in the demand for affordable housing is great, but this government is equal to the task. It's time for innovation. It's time for sustainability. It's time to ensure that every Jamaican who wants a home can own one. It's time to explore intermodal container home. Madam Speaker, this government will fix it. I thank you.
Mr. Kevar Bennett, member from St. Elizabeth, Southwestern.
Madam Speaker, members of this honorable house, irrespective of how we feel about the scourge of squatter settlements in Jamaica, what is indisputable is that squatters are Jamaicans just like you and I. They have a right to safe and decent habitation just like you and I. Madam Speaker, it is the role of the government to enable the attainment of this fundamental right by providing affordable housing. It is precisely for this reason, Madam Speaker, that the Youth Parliament of Jamaica is hereby urging the government to extend a 5-year amnesty during which squatters may have their habitations formalized and regularized. This amnesty, Madam Speaker, would contain measures to address informal settlements on all crown lands. A major objective of this policy would be to implement the needed infrastructures within these communities. This would serve to enhance the overall suitability of these environments for human habitation. The goals, the principles, and objectives of this amnesty policy are incorporated in the following policy brief. Madam Speaker, an amnesty is needed because they are currently engaged in illegal acts and as such are liable to face criminal penalties. This amnesty would temporarily relieve them from unjust legal jeopardy and incentivize to engage the state in order to benefit from the regularization process. Madam Speaker, as a part of this regularization process, the squatters would enter into a viable arrangement with the government such that they can contribute a monthly payment towards their full ownership over a 10-year period. Madam Speaker, while many of these squatters are not likely to be able to cover the full economic cost of their dwelling, their contributions of equity would ensure that they have a real stake in the sustainable development and maintenance of their homes and communities. Madam Speaker, let us not be quick to demolish squatter settlements. The Office of the United Nations of High Commissioner for Human Rights explains that several constitutions protect the right to adequate housing and, in fact, outlines the state general responsibility to ensure adequate housing and living conditions for all. This is further codified in the article of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, which recognizes inalienable right to adequate standard of living, including adequate housing. Madam Speaker, while we cannot negate the fact that squatter settlements are often a hub for increased criminal and illegal activities such as electricity theft, it is precisely for this reason why it is imperative for these settlements to be regularized and thereby brought under lawful regime. The benefits of this amnesty, Madam Speaker, serves as a key linchpin to catalyze Jamaica's economic social development. The squatter will be able to contribute to the country's welfare through paying taxes. Major reductions in crime and violence will also ensue. Madam Speaker, in addition to the call for an amnesty, the Youth Parliament of Jamaica calls for a complementary self-help scheme whereby residents improve their own homes with the approval and active support of local authorities. For example, Madam Speaker, the local authorities may provide subsidized building materials or a loan for residents to purchase them. Otherwise, Madam Speaker, residents can make all the improvements to their homes themselves. These recommendations will help us to achieve a long-term national development plan, a plan aimed to bolster Jamaica to achieve developed country status by 2030. The goal of Vision 2030, Madam Speaker, is to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, raise families, do business, and retire in paradise. These serve as the guiding principles which put people at the center of Jamaica's transformation. According to the plan, by 2030, every household should be living in a well-constructed dwelling unit. Madam Speaker, I urge the government of Jamaica to delay no longer in adoption of this and implementation of this much-needed solution to the crises, a crisis which is faced by so many poor Jamaicans. These are Jamaicans who for centuries have suffered at the hands of a system designed to oppress them, a system which has made them poor and kept them poor for far too long. Madam Speaker, I rest my case.
Honorable John D. Henry, Minister, Science, Energy and Technology.
Madam Speaker,
colleague government members, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Over 150 years ago, a proclamation drafted by the hands of our colonizers, reluctantly, if I may say so, affected the Anglophone Caribbean as Emancipation Day. That marked the abolition of slavery in the British Empire, but also marked Displacement Day. Displacement because while enslavers was given insurance money and avenues of recourse to claim the fortunes lost as a result of slavery, we were freed and left with nothing but the will to live. Those, Madam Speaker, were the first squatters, those that occupied the Crown land for which they had no paper. It is time to right this grave historical wrong. In 2022, we note that in the absence of affordable housing, squatting becomes a viable option. So, as trying youths, we are left to ask the question, how you get that system from? Both say me live on squatter land. Not true, me not rich like Matalan, me a born Jamaican. The draft National Housing Policy reports that the NHT alongside major and private developers provide an average of 11,152 housing units per annum. Given that the targeted number of houses per year is 15,000 units, this represents an annual shortage of 6,248 housing units. Madam Speaker, it is time to right this grave historical wrong. We currently have a national squatter management policy that greatly and gravely underserves the issue of squatting. This government intends to recondition this. We will launch Operation OII, the Own It initiative. This will see an organized and active registering of active squatters. Yes, Madam Speaker, we will seek out those committing the offense. We will alert those committing the offense, and we will work with them to have them regularized. Operation OII will present qualified persons who are squatting on Crown lands with the opportunity to purchase or enter a rent-to-own agreement to obtain legitimate ownership of these lands. Madam Speaker, I want you to understand that this is not a free-for-all, though. It's not a he, she, and the old lady approach. And Madam Speaker, I want you to get this. What we are not saying is that any and everybody can just get up and go and squat as they please and believe that the government will allow them to purchase the land after. We don't condone that indecency in this Parliament. Therefore, there must be some sort of control. Thus, the government will implement conditions under which persons qualify for Operation OII. 1. Persons must be living in areas that are considered small or having at least 25 households or greater. 2. Persons must provide proof that they have been occupying these areas for a significant period of time, that is, a minimum of at least 7 years. And 3, persons must provide proof that they have been acquiring legitimate utility service such as light and water. Madam Speaker, every Jamaican deserves a piece of land of their birth. Every Jamaican must have that right to own legitimate homes and land ownership, and that is what we are committed to do. So today, Madam Speaker, I want this honorable House and those in the hearing of my voice to know that we not have to rich like Matalan, feel we own a land in this island. I thank you.
Ms. Patrina Stewart, Deputy Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, just to put a finer point on that revelation from my colleague member from Southeastern St. Anne, 135 years after emancipation, August 1st, 1838, nearly the same amount of Jamaicans who were squatting then are squatting now. Today, November 2022, Jamaica has approximately 560,000 squatters. Madam Speaker, that's nearly an identical number to the amount of slaves who left the plantation, left to capture lands, crown lands on which they squatted. Madam Speaker, 185 years later, policies, acts, and the trust, and nothing has changed. Squatting, Madam Speaker, is something of an intergenerational curse on our society. The issue is evident. There is not enough affordable housing options available to our people. The current situation, Madam Speaker, is so disheartening that the Prime Minister has made affordable housing one of the hallmarks of his political campaign. But, Madam Speaker, if we are to change this situation that has survived over 18 decades, we must be radical and revolutionary. Madam Speaker, this government is proposing a policy change to increase the NHT loan amount from $6.5 million to $13 million, keeping the interest rates as they exist now. And Madam Speaker, just in case this House is saying the Deputy Prime Minister mad, she lick her chip and she lose some screws, I want to highlight to this Honourable House that the NHT has been consistently logging $20 billion in net surplus annually. So much so, Madam Speaker, that the government in 2017 approved for $11.4 billion to be taken out of the NHT surplus to cushion economic fallouts such as the fiscal impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Madam Speaker, today I stand here and I dare say, if the NHT surplus can be used to supplement other areas of government, then, Madam Speaker, it can be used for its intended purpose to provide poor people with homes. Madam Speaker, we can use the money to provide starter homes for those among us who are not earning millions of dollars per year. Madam Speaker, this government will ensure that the funds are not being used to build high-end properties that only a few can afford, but rather to invest in housing that majority of our NHT contributors can afford, catering to our teachers, or nurses, or police officers, or soldiers, or doctors, and other members of the public service. Madam Speaker, this government intends to ensure that the policy ensures that high-end developments are left to high-end developers, and that the NHT is functional and resolute in carrying out its mandate.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, I put it to you that the NHT has no business building $30 million units in New Kingston when our teachers are struggling to put a roof over their heads. So, Madam Speaker, another root van will not be built under this policy. And Madam Speaker, as I close, I want to remind this House that poverty is not a crime and people should not be punished for being poor. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 11 speaks to making human settlements inclusive and sustainable. Shelter is a basic need, and all persons should be able to put a roof over their head. And if one sign, Mr. Speaker, that shelters nothing can cost $17 million, then, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I have to ask this House, what exactly are we asking persons to buy with $6.5 million? Madam Speaker, the money is there, and people need roofs over their heads. I want a roof over my head. We need a roof over our heads. It is time to return the NHT to its intended purpose. I thank
you. Minister Cheek Perkins.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion be approved.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Mr. Campbell?
Good morning, members of the House. Madam Speaker, for every student, the process of early learning starts in the home in an informal way. Parents teach their children the fundamental skills, values, and essential attitudes necessary for daily living. But, Madam Speaker, once the child starts attending a regular school, most parents have a lot of things to say about their educational aspirations for their children's academic growth. However, Madam Speaker, their part in helping the youths develop these educational values by training them from home have been placed on a back burner, leaving them with the harsh ability of finding it to learn. Madam Speaker, children who receive support from their parents develop an appropriate mindset, motivation, and self-discipline at school. However, Madam Speaker, frankly speaking, disengaged parents who are not interested in the academic life of their children often promote failures and social issues such as juvenile delinquency. Madam Speaker, this also creates a generation of students not interested in studying or gaining an education. For students who have supportive parents, Madam Speaker, guiding them at home, these students also are more likely to enjoy school. Thus, Madam Speaker, parental involvement and support at home has a positive influence on the student's mindset, attitude, and behavior. Madam Speaker, for instance, these students have a better attendance record as they have supportive parents who help prepare them for school every day. Similarly, Madam Speaker, these students have a better performance when completing homework or submitting assignments on time because of the help and guidance available at home. However, Madam Speaker, students who lack supportive parents have to struggle on their own. Madam Speaker, this not only affects their performance, But at the same time, it also negatively impacts their self-esteem, leaving them vulnerable to suicide, criminal activities, thereby increasing the percentage of juvenile delinquency in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, parental involvement has a positive influence on students' attitude and behavior. It has been observed, Madam Speaker, that children of disengaged parents have a negative attitude in the classroom and are more disruptive because of a lack of consequences at home. However, Madam Speaker, all this is because of parental support. This is also related to parental monitoring. When the student gets monitored at home for their behavior, Madam Speaker, then they behave appropriately in school. They pay more attention in the classroom and eventually, Madam Speaker, perform better in their studies. Madam Speaker, given the number of undereducated parents in Jamaica, I recommend that it be considered for parents to receive educational support so that they too may have a chance at education just as their children. Saying this, Madam Speaker, I do not speak of the Heart Trust NSDA, but a distinct organization reliable to parents in helping them to get educated, whereas fixing the illiteracy issue in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, whereas it is hard financially for parents to be involved in the students physically at PTAs, I am proposing for this to become an act of Parliament, whereas the government implements a school bus system to transport students free to their government schools. Madam Speaker, this will boost parents' ability to not only get involved in their students' life, but also rectify the issue that comes as a disadvantage of lack of parental involvement in our young people. Madam Speaker, young children I'm speaking of young children that are up and about being involved in sexual activities publicly on our road. Parents who do not attend PTA meetings because they cannot afford transportation costs. They know, Mr. Speaker, through this system, will have transportation for their children. They will also have transportation for themselves to PTA. This, Madam Speaker, will reduce the occurrence of children being kidnapped, children having sexual activities rather than going home, but being transported directly home, cost-effective, safe, reliable, and just for the future. Thereby, Madam Speaker, this will thereby help us to make Jamaica the place to live, work, raise families, and do business with our future secured.
Ms. Naika Gervan, member from St. Catherine Southeastern.
Madam Speaker, I rise to present a motion on parenting and education. The moral decay among our students has become the new pandemic, and we are seeing the very little that is being done to rehabilitate, educate, and to empower our children. We are seeing the negative influences of music, drugs, the constant misuse and exploitation of social media, and the blatant disregard for law and order, especially among our youth. This comes as a result of little to no parental upbringing and moral culturing. Madam Speaker, we can reflect on the recent happenings in our public schools in particular that have been widespread across various medias, especially since the resumption of face-to-face classes. It was our esteemed Governor General, His Excellency the Honorable Sir Patrick Allen, who stated, and I quote, There is nothing wrong with Jamaica that cannot be fixed with what is right with Jamaica. My fellow colleagues, it is to this extent the National Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica was formed as a mechanism to foster greater partnerships and interaction among parents, teachers, and by extension, the school community. In an article published by the Jamaica Gleaner in May 2008, the then president of the National Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica, Mr. Sylvester Anderson, reported on the greater need for better parent involvement in students' educational development. It was in that said report, Madam Speaker, that he gave an account for the attendance rate of parents at PTA meetings. He stated, and I quote, "Attendance at PTA meetings is pretty low. We have an attendance rate of about 20 to 30%. Madam Speaker, our children are suffering at the hands of negligent parents. We are seeing and feeling the implications of poor academic performance among our students. More than 11% failed to submit SBAs for the May-June 2022 sitting of the CSEC examinations, according to one report from the Jamaica Gleaner. Our children are suffering from mental illnesses, psychological illnesses, and becoming breeders of crime and violence." My fellow colleagues, there are several other reports I could reference. But in the interest of time, I shall press on to propose a strategy where we can all collaborate in an effort to alleviate these social issues. As a community development activist, I urge parents to support schools by becoming actively involved in parent-teachers associations. Furthermore, parents play an integral role in the development and success of the child, and implore them to work with teachers to instill discipline and respect in children. Madam Speaker, as Jamaica people would have said, one of them no dash it way. We can fix this problem. We can fix this problem that is plaguing our nation, and it starts with us. It starts in the home. It starts with you and I. I am therefore charging the government of Jamaica to act now. If we want to preserve the future of Jamaica, act now. I am therefore proposing a pilot program, the attempt, the training, education, and mentorship program under the theme Empowering Youths, Preserving Our Future. This will foresee us, Madam Speaker, incorporating technology, including WhatsApp groups and virtual mediums, in order to better reach parents. We'll be able to send out weekly and daily updates, facilitate feedback from parents, incorporating them in the decision-making processes, where we'll be able to delegate tasks respectively in order to hold them accountable and responsible. Parents will feel valued for their contribution and further guarantee a sense of belonging. Mentorship and mental health intervention from role models of various disciplines, including sports, arts, entertainment, and culture. I know most of us would have seen that preliminary report from that intense match between Brazil and Serbia a few days ago. No murders were recorded in Jamaica on that day. My fellow colleagues of this honorable House, we won't stop there. To ensure the success of this pilot program, we'll be working alongside the Ministry of Education and Youth and its respective agencies to conduct feasibility studies in an effort to assess and evaluate the various aspects of this program. Encouragement, sweet labor for true. A revised incentive mechanism, including cash grants and other prizes, will be implemented to acknowledge parents for their invaluable contribution to the school's development. Madam Speaker, parents will be better educated and equipped with the necessary tools to foster healthier parent-child relations through active listening and mediation, rather than resorting to abusive forms tailored as discipline tools. Parents will then develop a sense of confidence in their parenting skills while sharpening their decision-making skills. This initiative is guaranteed to boost morale and productivity, especially among our students, and is expected to yield greater academic performance and to help students develop self-esteem, integrity, accountability, and character. In essence, Madam Speaker, a win-win for all stakeholders. Esteemed dignitaries, members of this honorable House, we are committed. We are wholeheartedly committed to the people of Jamaica, and we are reignited to play our part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race.
and to work together to achieve our manifesto for Vision 2030 and beyond, to make Jamaica a model economy to live, work, raise families, and do business. Thank you.
Ms. Brianna Edwards, St. Anne Southwestern, Minister of Labor and Social Security.
Madam Speaker, colleagues of the government benches, members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. At the end of the day, the most overwhelming key to a child's success is the positive involvement of parents. This quote by Jane Hull echoes the fact that parents need to be involved in their child's life to ensure the child's development and address their physical, cognitive, emotional, and social growth. Madam Speaker, education in Jamaica, on which the economy spends over 5% of its gross domestic product, is in crisis and needs urgent attention. Williams 2015 postulates that a parenting assessment tool developed and tested by the Jamaica's National Parenting Support Commission proves that lack of parental involvement is responsible for students' behavioral problems in many institutions because parents are yet to create structures at home for their children. There is little to no parental involvement and parents are not nurturing their children. With statistics like this and the established fact that there is a positive relationship between parental involvement and a child's development, there ought to be a change. Is it then any surprise, Madam Speaker, that so far this year, children have been charged with 875 significant crimes in Jamaica, 79 being murder charges? Madam Speaker, the childhood years are critical years of a child's life, and parents are to ensure that the foundation they set for their children is one that will positively develop them in all aspects of life. The learning process begins at the home, and if a child fails to receive the fundamental step, it is likely for that child to struggle. And so, to the current government, we implore that measures be implemented that will seek to promote further parental involvement in the education system. The newest slang, Madam Speaker, have us catching everything. Catch the hat a lie. Catch the wig a lie. But why not twist it by starting a campaign dubbed, go catch and read your book, never lie. To address a policy acronym, READ, as resources, education, advocacy, and delivery, are resources. Parents don't always have the resources to invest in their children and should be provided with the stationary items and learning tools that will create a learning environment in the home. This will take a unified approach, and so this government calls for a further public-private partnership between the government of Jamaica and the private sector to narrow the gap and provide these essential tools that are fundamental in children's academic development. Private sector organizations such as Digicel, whose education portfolio is aligned with the United Nations Social Development Goal, which is to ensure that all students can access free, equitable, and quality education, have donated educational resources to students to increase academic development. E-educate. Parents sometimes fail to grasp the link between early childhood experiences and positive outcomes in later life. Therefore, this House, Madam Speaker, is proposing the launch of a public education campaign to heighten parents' awareness, and one that will seek to offer parents recommendations on how they can get involved and the increased benefits of involvement. Technology, Madam Speaker, has become a man's best friend, and so how convenient when the information will be aired across television and radio stations, as well as the various social media platforms to promote this urgent need for parental involvement in a child's life. an advocate. For too long, Madam Speaker, this issue of poor parental involvement in education has been silenced. We need to speak out. There should be greater advocacy from national groups to promote greater parental involvement in the education process. The National Parent Teachers Association is one such group, Madam Speaker, that has been launched to assist with this process. But I'm calling for greater partnership amongst the schools, the ministry, and the NPTA to recognize the disconnection, evaluate parents' needs, and create policies that will cause our parents to think, act, and to get involved. Finally, Madam Speaker, deliver. Simply join forces to get the work done. Madam Speaker, with appropriate checks and balances in place to hold everyone accountable, the REID policy will not only increase parental involvement, but it will improve the child's overall development. The responsibility of our children's educational development is a collective enterprise. We, therefore, refuse to accept the excuses and implore the government to deliver on their mandates and protect the future of our Jamaican youths. Thank
you. Mr. Javon Malcolm, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Madam Speaker, members of the government benches, worthy opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Madam Speaker, the primary function of a parent is to provide both financial and emotional support to their children while nurturing them to be better adults and better individuals. But with everyone working hard to secure a decent living, securing $1 or $2 along the way has taken up the time, Madam Speaker, and has captured their time in a sense that they cannot provide the emotional and educational support. But it should be noted that majority of these households are predominantly single-parent households, Madam Speaker, putting a limit on what one person can complete in a given day. But as Adiola Orphan correctly puts it, a positive parental involvement is vital to a successful education in the 21st century. I often wonder, is there an artificial wall between our parents and our education system, Mr. Speaker? Low parental involvement has resulted in an insurmountable number of social ills plaguing our nation's children. These include, but are not limited to, poor academic performance, depression, low self-esteem, among others, such as the unfortunate incidents of students becoming susceptible to criminal behaviors. Inner-city youths are victims of low parental support, particularly in education. Consequently, 56%, Mr. Speaker, of our children within these areas drop out of schools. In September 2021, the Honorable Horace Chang highlighted in a youth summit on crime and violence that 40% of all murderers are young men between 15 and 24. These vulnerable youths, Mr. Speaker, are being groomed to take up leadership positions in gangs in our community. But given the current predicament, Mr. Speaker, and the walls that have separated our parents from our education system, I have come with a bulldozer to demolish and reconstruct the framework and the mediums through which we reach out and encourage our parents to participate in school activities. Firstly, in this renovation process, we want to move away from the macro approach utilized by our current education system to reach parents through parent-teachers meeting. And in so doing, implement a micro model that is more focused and meaningful. The current approach does not give parents a one-on-one experience with teachers. This is suggesting that the purpose of these meetings is in fact being defeated. The MICA perspective I am recommending is one that would reduce the concentration of a General Assembly to classroom meeting, not as a substitute, Mr. Speaker, but as an addition to what already exists. Mr. Speaker, this approach will provide better engagement as our parents will meet with our teachers 3 times per school terms. This will afford parents the opportunity to ask direct questions about the performance and progress of their children. This project also has several workshops to assist parents with raising children. In order to make this more meaningful, Mr. Speaker, we also want to create a database system that generates a monthly report of the attendance of these parents to these workshops. In cases where the report is highlighting the inherent inconsistency of a particular parent, Mr. Speaker, this government pushes for social workers to do some house visit to ascertain the issue that has prevented these parents from taking part in these workshops. Mr. Speaker, as we continue to grapple with the factors affecting parental involvement in our education system, let us join hands and mind together for a resilient and reignited push for nation building and social change. Let us encourage our schools to forge solid partnerships with our parents. And as such, Mr. Speaker, I highly recommend that we implement an accountability drive by the name DigiUp. Give them an update. The purpose of this drive is to track our parents while they assist their children with various homework and other school-related activity. This drive will have the following features. It will be a digital user-friendly platform, or software, of course, and allow parents to scan a barcode and to register for specific subjects already offered in our education system. This DigiUp, Mr. Speaker, Give Them an Update drive will equip our parents with the skills and tools to help their children and themselves in advance. In closing, we know the problems, and here we have some vital solutions. So let us bank on it, Mr. Speaker, and allow low parental involvement in our education system, as Burna Boy said, to be our last.
Mr. Daniel Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, I so move that these motions be approved.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Sangster Smith.
To my colleagues, government members, members of the opposition, viewers, my fellow Jamaicans, greetings. As mentioned in songs by recording artist Yaksta, assets over hype and investment over braffing. Mr. Speaker, I have been grappling with a question. Do young Jamaicans understand and practice the principles of what those statements stand on? I do not think so, Mr. Speaker. According to financial research and economics-focused weblog, Financial Sensibility, only 33% of Jamaicans surveyed indicated that they had knowledge of basic financial principles. Only 33%, Mr. Speaker? My word. For the viewers and the House, and those of the House who are not familiar with what the numbers in Cashpot represent, 3 means dead. But to have the same number twice, just call it that we are dead. Having only 33% of our young Jamaicans being financially literate, but only persons ages 30 to 59 are, according to published in an article, and I quote, putting financial literacy front and center by Oran Hall, yes, Mr. Speaker, I do agree with Mr. Hall that we do indeed need, not want, but need to put financial literacy front and center, especially when it comes to young persons living and working in Jamaica. I do not think the Minister of Education and Youth, the Honourable Favour Williams, could have said it any better, and I quote, "We need students in our primary schools and in our high schools to be exposed to financial literacy." Mr. Speaker, it takes a village to raise a child, and therefore it will take the financial literate to effectively educate the financial illiterate. That is how we will empower youth for Jamaica 60 and beyond. According to the Financial Services Commission Jamaica, only over 2,500 students have been impacted by the Financial Services Commission Schools Financial Education Program since its inception in 2011. Mr. Speaker, 2,500 is too low a mark. 8 years from now, it needs to be by at least over 250,000. How else are we going to achieve Vision 2030? The Financial Services Commission Jamaica Schools Financial Education Program is not ready, Mr. Speaker. Actually, it is soft. You know what is ready? Program Tough, which I am proposing. The acronym Tough stands for Teaching You Financial Fundamentals, which will target more students by combining prudent financial decisions, knowledge, and attitudes with musical entertainment. How will this be done? I will implore various upcoming and established entertainers to volunteer themselves and create either singles or catalogs of songs, along with the help of financial experts such as founder of Stocks on the Rocks, Simon Johnson, and his team, to impart their knowledge to the entertainers whilst using that information to create both vibrant and educational music that students can both enjoy and learn from. Occasional school tours can be held to attract more youth to enjoy the new wave, the financial education wave. Mr. Speaker, it is not here alone that has waves. Financial education has waves too. And as the government side of the house, we want all young Jamaicans to be surfing that wave. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, through the Tough program, Jamaicans learn how to use and apply financial instruments such as budgeting, revenue spending plan, saving, credit, and insurance to their daily lives so they can improve their lives, become financially stable, and work towards achieving financial freedom. Included in this program is also the Financial Literacy Dictionary, which is a compilation of all terminologies used when it comes to finance and economics. With the inclusion of this dictionary, financial communication is definitely more effective as comprehension inevitably ameliorates. Make money the subject, and you see more students at the front of the class instead of the back. Mr. Speaker, I am not Rising King, obviously. But the new education policy that the Ministry of Investment, Industry, and Commerce is proposing is indeed tough. I thank you.
Mr. DeAndre Houghton, member from St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, we have a crisis of literacy in this country. If your first thought is literacy of reading, don't worry. Our children know how to read and write for the most part. The problem is that is just not good enough anymore. We need to be financially literate, and we need to start shouting that enough. We'll continue to play catch-up with the rest of the world. Speaker of the House, members of the government, colleagues of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Can you imagine an instance of a bank teller not being knowledgeable about the basic financial skills required to carry out the day-to-day transaction of a bank? Or even a pump attendant who works in the industry where he or she must carry out the basic financial operations. Even in our communities, we interact with shopkeepers on a day-to-day basis, and if that person is not financially adept, it poses a problem for customers. A survey of 142 countries on citizens understanding the basic financial principles found that only 33% of Jamaicans were adequately financially literate, placing us in the bottom 42 percentile. This compared to our literacy rate of 87% shows only one ugly truth. Our Jamaicans, 50% of them are being left behind. Members of the government, opposition, and Jamaicans at home, it is time we sound the alarm. For those who are still not convinced, I hope you understand, as the largest English-speaking country in the Caribbean, as well as the largest student population in the Caribbean, where financial illiteracy will literally, if continued to fester, wreak havoc in the long run. It's not just that we need bankers, but how are persons to invest when they don't know how a bank works? It's not just that people need to know about the TAJ, but how are persons asking, well, how are you to ask persons for tax compliance when they don't know the importance? And it's just not about raising interest rates to fight inflation, but how are you to fight inflation in a country that doesn't know budgeting? Mr. Speaker, it is time we be real in 2022. I should not be learning about conjugations of verbs in Spanish and not learn how to buy a stock. I should not be learning about the Pythagoras theorem at the expense of balancing a checkbook. And I should not have to learn about the nitrogen cycle before I learn how to fill out a bank form. Mr. Speaker, these are the following proposals I have for you today. Firstly, a critical issue facing youth is poor financial literacy levels among our parents. There is a direct link between one's financial literacy levels and opportunities available to one's children. This is particularly visible in the lack of financial preparedness seen in annual transition of secondary to tertiary education. Under the National Planning Support Commission, specifically the Parenting Support Division, we propose an expansion that will include financial literacy. This will lead to a greater financial efficiency, planning, and expansion for our parents. What about the people in our society who are self-employed? They need help too. Secondly, a short financial literacy assessment before issuing any new business license. It's high time that we ensure that persons know about the running of a business before starting their own and taking own liabilities and debt risks. Mr. Speaker, I propose that we partner with the Companies Office of Jamaica to issue the license to financially competent individuals after they have been successful in this assessment. If they are not successful, they will be provided with avenue to learn several financial skills provided by the National Parenting Support Commission. Finally, there is a potential solution of integrating young people into the labor market through energizing the concept of young entrepreneurship and financial literacy. A financial awareness campaign targeting high school students, working adults, and our university students will be fruitful to this end. It also needs to be on our televisions, on our social media, in our workplaces, and as many communities as possible. This is the cry of our people all across the country. Action we need, not a bag of mouth. We need change, and we need it now. The future rests with us. I now rest, Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Symphony Walters. Member from Manchester Northeastern.
She had to resort to working at a BPO. Sasha is also a budding entrepreneur with a scented candle business called The Scent Is Real. However, she struggles to make a profit as she would like. She spends her money on frivolities instead of pumping the profit back into the business. Sasha is also in debt because she was dependent on student loan. She uses her income to pay her debt and sustain herself. Mr. Speaker, Sasha is a prime example of why we need Jamaicans to be more aware of what financial literacy is. Mr. Speaker, here are my recommendations that will improve financial literacy. There are currently programs implemented by different entities, such as the Innovation Grant for New Ideas to Entrepreneurship REIGNITED by the Development Bank of Jamaica, which targets ventures in the creative industry, BPOs, software projects, and other sectors. Many entrepreneurs are unaware of the different routes in readily financing their businesses. My first recommendation, Mr. Speaker, is that the government can partner with the different companies to provide funding and create a database of all the entities that offer funding and have them in one place. This will be in print media and online. On November 21, 2022, at the recently held Young Entrepreneur Success Summit, Senator Norman Dunn mentioned that the government has partnered with international agencies such as the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank and the local financial institutions to make grants and loans available at preferential rates. These grants need to be more marketable for young entrepreneurs to grab the opportunities that they might be unaware of. According to Investopedia.com, financial literacy is the ability to understand and effectively use various financial skills, including personal financial management, budgeting, and investing. In 2019, Jamaica scored 33% in financial literacy by Standard & Poor's global ratings. Mr. Speaker, there is way more room for improvement to increase financial literacy in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, my second recommendation is through the National Strategy for Financial Literacy, which should include modeling different financial literacy workshops. For example, currently in this Youth Month, Jamaica National is doing a youth series which promotes financial literacy among youths. These proposed workshops and initiatives should cater for all ages. Financial literacy should start from basic school around basic money-saving skills. To bring financial literacy across a child, a cartoon could be used as a form of edutainment. These cartoons would include basic math and money-saving tools. Knowing from early about financial literacy aids in lowering financial abuse, and it is never too late to start correcting oneself when it comes to financial literacy. The goals to be met by this national strategy to meet even the needs of vulnerable groups is to partner with financial institutions in putting together financial supplements through print media, audio, audiovisual, and even Braille to cater to everyone's needs and understanding. My final recommendation, Mr. Speaker, is to effectively promote financial literacy across all ages, to have financial expos and tours biannually across all parishes. Financial school tours would aid in sensitizing students across all institutions from early childhood education right up to tertiary education. These tours could also include more jingle competitions and essay competitions about financial literacy. Participating in these activities aids in youth understanding what they've learned and relate with their peers. Many youths do not always learn from someone older, but instead, sometimes from their very own peers, as it is more relatable. Mr. Speaker, I believe that these recommendations I propose to this Honourable House will improve Jamaica's financial literacy score. We must nip the financial illiteracy from the bud. Early education will improve financial literacy. I thank
you. Ms. Theona Godfrey, member from St. Catherine, Southeastern.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, good afternoon. Imagine finishing university, student loans to repay, and jobs that should be in your purview are not available. As dancehall artist Massacre says, we'll make the sacrifice because we'll have to be great. Mr. Speaker, as we finally escape the grasp of the COVID-19 pandemic and return to a sense of normalcy as a nation, it becomes clear that the rate of underemployment has skyrocketed, which has made it difficult for persons to practice financial literacy. It is crucial for persons to achieve financial literacy in today's climate as a result of everyday factors affecting life, such as loans, mortgages, credit cards, health insurance, and investments. Jamaicans have been finding themselves in a situation where individuals are forced to work in low-income and low-skilled jobs regardless of their qualifications, such as the business process outsourcing companies. At the expense of putting these skills and abilities to the side, increased numbers in the BPOs are great for our unemployment rates, but for our youths to be earning between $60,000 to $80,000 per month with the current cost of living is laughable. Six of one, half dozen of the other, Mr. Speaker. Well, how do we contribute to society when we have majority of our youths barely able to make ends meet? Mr. Speaker, these days, every citizen has a bank account, meaning more of our young people has access to loans, credit cards, and the means to rack up immense debt. For our youths to prosper, we as a nation will need to provide the means to rectify these issues. Mr. Speaker, the government through the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce has implemented the Jamaica Youth Business Trust Loan Program, which provides young entrepreneurs between the ages of 18 to 35 with an integrated package of support and services to help them start and grow successful businesses. This is an excellent avenue to provide funding to young entrepreneurs to start businesses and incentivize local businesses to start apprenticeship programs for new graduates. As can be imagined, many of our young people are arguably afraid to take the risk of starting their own business. But with the support from the government, there can be more successful entrepreneurs able to contribute to our economy and reduce underemployment rates. Now that we have identified the existing systems to put more money in the youth's them pockets, Mr. Speaker, I am recommending this policy solution to address the subject of financial literacy. By partnering with the Ministry of Education and Youth and also the Ministry of Finance to drum up national interest in financial education as we strive for fiscal freedom. If money management was actually taught as a course, we wouldn't have so many young people at the back of the class leaving school without subjects. A national program from the secondary level as well would be game-changing for the future of this nation's financial growth. Implementation of a mandatory money management course in school curriculums from grades 7 to 9 across all secondary institutions covering investing, borrowing, taxation, budgeting, and financial management. Mr. Speaker, there will be no need for new hires as our cohorts of existing business teachers already have the capacity to teach this course. Exposure to these financial skill sets over a 3-year period will give you the best opportunity at not only good money management practices, but also have them financially aware. At age 12, they are young enough to still be teachable, but also at an age where they can appreciate money. Mr. Speaker, now every student has the opportunity to attend sixth form. This gives persons who have decided to continue this money management course beyond the mandatory period an opportunity to receive a subsidized certification of completion in more advanced levels of financial literacy, such as stocks and trading by the government. Being financially literate is not only for our high schoolers, Mr. Speaker. I am recommending to this House that a national drive of awareness be implemented. If more emphasis is placed on educational campaigns to sensitize our youths of these existing systems through our traditional media, social media, and university placement services, we should see an increase in young people accessing these programs. The launch of a financial literacy week for all Jamaicans would be key in spreading information about how groundbreaking this practice would be for our little but Talawa island. Our local banks already have financial strategies in place, but we know how the average Jamaican dislikes going into their local branch, so this information remains inaccessible to all. With the present reality of scams and fraud being so rampant, wide-scale education for our people could deter these criminals if we remove the ignorance of their targets. Imagine a future where every Jamaican has a savings account with substantial amounts in it, stocks and investments under their belts, and the ability to own their own homes that they can pass to future generations, which is what wide-scale, mandatory financial literacy can give us. Now, doesn't that sound like Jamaica Vision 2030, the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business? Let us empower our Jamaican people to manage their money and debt wisely, plan and save for the future, and prevent and protect against fraud and financial abuse. I thank you.
Minister Sangster Smith.
Mr. Speaker, before I move the motion, I cannot leave this sitting without giving a big thumbs up to the youth that I have worked with from my constituency, Southwestern St. Elizabeth, who have made the 2022 Cornwall County project a reality. Business over badness. Mr. Speaker, I must say St. Best is best. I now move the motion. I now move that the motion be approved. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Robinson.
No count me out. Don't count them out. As the opposition member said, one not dead, no dash it way. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, when the dialectics surrounding mental health surfaces, an ideal Jamaica does not carry pity on her face or discard you as an outcast, because that is the smear of stigma. However, according to the Ministry of Health, what remains the reality is that 14.3% of Jamaicans suffering from depression alone are classed as mad, sick, head no good. A 2018 Pan American Health Organization study recorded a 20% increase across 2015 and 2016, with nearly 108,000 visits made to public health facilities and 132,000 respectively within Jamaica. Notwithstanding, these reflect as little as half of the true need for treatment, as the region ranges from 37.4% for non-affective psychoses to 64% for bipolar. If social stigma is not promptly addressed, expect perpetuated shame, isolation, and disregard. According to the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, JSAFE, 49% of homeless Jamaicans experience mental illness. In 2017, consultant psychiatrist Dr. Jeffrey Walcott linked untreated mental illnesses to Jamaica's crime problem. Dr. Walcott posited that 40% of Jamaicans suffer from personality disorder. Members of the House, care cannot be explored until the country acknowledges the present danger. Mr. Speaker, that same study concluded that high risk of behavioral dysfunction in the Jamaican population has significant implications in light of the country's high rate of crime and violence. Macroscopically, this poses a significant threat to the youth and their conditioned development. According to Dr. Carla Hilton, CEO of Youth Empowerment Solutions, children with high emotional intelligence are less likely to abuse alcohol and drugs, have lower levels of anxiety and depression, and are empathetic with less violent behaviors. Now, considering the government's simultaneous emphasis on mental health care and stigma reduction, Jamaica is ripe for a significant push. As such, this honorable government proposes the Early Intervention Program, Mind the Gap. This is geared towards increasing mental health integration into the secondary curriculum from first to sixth form for progressive detection and stigma reduction. Upon entry to secondary institutions, a mental health evaluation should be added to annual medicals for early detection and mitigation. By extension, Mr. Speaker, we propose the implementation of emotional intelligence and mental health awareness being integrated as part of the overt curriculum as a core subject area in schools. The policy will utilize guidance counselors already trained in said areas. And yes, we, the government, note the shortage of guidance counselors across Jamaica. However, this can be supplemented by community mental health players, such as professionals from the Community Mental Health Program under the Southeast Regional Authority until said deficit is met. This will capture how to address persons with mental disorders and illnesses, spotting the signs, how to seek help, self-control, and self-awareness. The WHO says mental health issues become evident around age 14. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, if we intend to mitigate stigmatization and ignorance, it must directly target the youth. We cannot replenish intelligence where none is shown. Encouraging equality between mental and physical illnesses will produce a positive shift and confirm the proof that persons living with mental illnesses can live productive and happy lives. Members of the House, had you been sidelined for years, wouldn't you feel away? I know I would feel away. As leaders, we must be proactive in policy making. Let's redefine the word mad as making a difference. Time come for us to reel in the growing epidemic through aggressive treatment, education,
and reintegration of those living with mental illnesses. Delay is danger. Mr. Speaker, mental health are everybody's business. No count them out.
Mr. Javoy Crossman, member from St. Andrews Southeastern.
Mr. Speaker, I'm me alone in the dark room. I mean, I've nobody to talk to. Just me, myself, and I and my shadow. These are the words of Flex, a footballer from the community of Spanish Town. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak on the matter of psychological well-being and its implications on Jamaican youth. Since the start of the pandemic, there has been increased conversations about the psychological well-being of the youth in Jamaica. The truth is, mental health is a topic that has been ignored for far too long. But now is the time to talk about this. Mr. Speaker, Flex is a young man struggling with mental health. On June 22, Flex's mother saw changes in his behavioral pattern and said, "But wait, you're mad now." The Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, says Jamaica's total spend on mental health services is inadequate to meet the growing demand for these services. According to a recent study done by CAPRI, up to 60% of those treated at hospitals for attempted suicides were adolescents and youth under the age of 24. Mr. Speaker, like Flex, Sharon, who works at a call center, and sometimes who works at a call center is stressed due to work and sometimes make outbursts like, "Jesus, me tired!" In the short term, mental health problems can cause people to be alienated from their peers because of perceived unattractive personality traits and behaviors. If you were someone unaware of mental health issues, you would classify Sharon as a madhead. Mr. Speaker, now we have two similar individuals, Sharon and Flex, who people are now saying are mad. Imagine Flex and Sharon on the wellness bench. This serves to improve nothing. It is useless. In order to solve this issue, we need more than just a wellness bench, Mr. Speaker. The problems that we are facing can be summarized as follows. Poor access to mental health services can lead to an elevated suicide rate. Poor social support leads to poor outcomes. This impacts the productivity of local businesses. Mr. Speaker, in a Jamaica Observer article dated November 4, 2022, it was noted that since the start of 2022, there has been numerous reports of males committing suicide due to depression. Flex will add to the statistics if we don't act now. Mr. Speaker, if we don't act now, he will become one of the statistics. Mr. Speaker, I propose to this Honourable House. I hope the government will explore the possibilities of training leaders and members of grassroots and non-governmental organizations so that they can know how to treat persons with mental health issues. The government should make arrangements for psychologists to visit these centers and help individuals with mental health. Statistics from the Ministry of Health indicated that employee absenteeism secondary to mental health issues cost Jamaica $859 million alone between 2013 and 2014. Mr. Speaker, I advise the government to establish a private-public sector partnership geared at creating inclusive workplace policies to support staff living with mental issues. This will prevent social exclusion and a decline in self-actualization. Mr. Speaker, the recommendations have gone forth. I now charge the ruling party, the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, to act on my recommendations.
Ms. Janelle Lawrence, member from St. James East Central.
Mr. Speaker, madded, mad smuddy, madman, mad. Mad is the word used to describe and class the individuals that suffer from mental illness within our Jamaican society. We make it seem as though mental illness is synonymous to madness, but that is on a general scale. So what really is a mental illness or disorder? The Mental Health Act of 1997 states that a mental disorder is a disorder of thought, perception, or memory which impacts a person's conduct, judgment, ability to understand reality, or capability to meet life's expectations, which renders them mentally unstable. Imagine, a simple three-letter word is what creates this reluctance, this fear of being scorned, this fear of becoming a statistic, this fear of being set aside. In other words, Mr. Speaker, if people them shame a kill them, Mr. Speaker. No, if I were to openly state that I live with schizophrenia, the silence would be as deafening as it was just now. In this silence, one may have wondered, Lord, suppose she can't let me down now. A recent headline read, mentally ill man mobbed following fatal stabbing in St. Elizabeth. Now I have highlighted this to say, the mentally ill are 10 times more likely to be victims of violent acts. These individuals are just like you and I. They are people. Why do we proceed to treat them less than? Where is the humanity? Mr. Speaker, to overcome this stigma that is now like a plague, individuals need to be taught. So let us start with our first-line responders, the police. Under Section 15 of the Mental Health Act, if a constable observes a person in a public area or under circumstances that suggest he is mentally ill, the constable may, without a warrant, take the individual into custody and accompany him to a psychiatric facility for treatment. Mr. Speaker, this begs the question, are our officers adequately trained or trained at all for this matter? In a conversation with a trainee constable and a constable, Mr. Speaker, imagine when asked if they were exposed to best practices on how to handle a hostile mentally ill individual during and after training, both were left speechless. Mr. Speaker, we are 8 years away from Vision 2030. This simply cannot be. How can we give them the right to restrain these individuals when they are not even aware of the process that is associated with restraining the mentally ill? Mr. Speaker, I charge the government to make the amendment to the Jamaica Constabulary Forces training curriculum to include 21st century training techniques that will afford the requisite skills, knowledge, and best practices to restrain mentally ill persons. Mr. Speaker, in examining the problem, let us look at fixing things on a national level. October 10th is internationally recognized as World Mental Health Day. However, we, the opposition, believe that emphasis needs to be placed on this day. Therefore, our proposal is that in public schools like Peace Day or Jamaica Day or even Jeans Day, Mental Wellness Day should be institutionalized so as to make children cognizant of the same. We could even go as far as to make it Mental Wellness Week, so that the focus on mental health and wellness can be even greater with the aid of a week of activities. Mr. Speaker, a lot more attention needs to be paid to the promotion of mental health, as there is no good health without good mental health, and this is something that everyone needs to know. To help raise awareness, a proposal: someone living with a mental illness who is taking control of their illness could come in and interact with the students to show them that mentally ill people are not scary. This mandate can help in combating what has been taught through word and actions for generations onto generations. Parents and guardians as well can be engaged in mental health and wellness seminars. Now, Mr. Speaker, the aim is simply to get everyone educated. Therefore, let us all play our part. Let us all work together to prioritize mental health and wellness. Members of this honorable house, it is time for us to stomp out the stigma. Mr. Speaker, I rest my case.
Miss Roche Blair, member from Portland Western.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I stand in this honorable house to address the matter of psychological well-being in our society. Make we talk about it, Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, the CDC defines mental health as our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. The Jamaican society has painted individuals who suffer from mental disorders as second-class citizens and overlook individuals suffering from anxiety disorders, depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and post-traumatic stress disorder. They are made to feel as though because their mental illnesses are not as high risk as, let's say, a schizophrenic, they are less important. Madam Speaker, this is simply not true. Madam Speaker, in October 2022, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and Youth, have launched an initiative to provide mental health sensitivity training to professionals in about 500 schools across the island. That is not enough either. One factor of this initiative is knowing when and where to seek help. How do we expect these individuals to seek help, or rather know where to seek help, when there are not enough locations or affordable care providers available? The Jamaican motto is a testament to the diversity of cultures and ethnicities in the country. Many of these cultures have no religion or different forms of worship. Most of us are forced to seek assistance from guidance counselors or the church. What about the rest of the island? Mr. Speaker, according to a 2021 article in Psychology Today, Jamaican mental health care system underfunded, overrun. A prime example, the government last year allocated a measly 10 million Jamaican dollars to renovate the Bellevue Hospital. A monopoly money that A report by the World Health Organization indicates that there is approximately one psychiatrist to every 100,000 Jamaican citizens and even less psychologists. These individuals who suffer from these disorders are on a hillside and them literally not nobody for talk. Madam Speaker, I propose to this honorable house that the government of Jamaica through the Ministry of Health and Wellness's programs in its bid to destigmatize mental health disorders, expand its budgetary allocations to increase the number of psychologists and psychiatrists across the island in facilities in all 14 parishes, as well as allocate funds towards increasing transportation for those in more rural areas to get to these facilities. This allows them to know that we are not just focused on high-risk mental illness patients, but all mental illness patients. Madam Speaker, I propose to this House that the government launches a campaign dubbed Talk About It, We No Shame, that reaches people through the traditional and new media outlets. This campaign requires the government partner with key social media influencers to educate the general public on how to identify the signs of these mental illnesses that are not visible or often displayed in public spaces, as well as to promote accessibility of the mental health facilities and include the promotion of the National Health Fund, which highly subsidizes the cost of medication, with a special focus on depression in youth, as it is often overlooked and met with remarks like, you know, have a chick nor a child, why stress you? Mental illness is not just a man on the street. It is not just a man eating out of a rubbish bin. Mental illness wears a suit and tie. Mental illness goes to work, it goes to school, it has a family. Mental illness is everywhere. Out of many, we are one people. Make we talk about it, Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the recommendations are clear. I rest my case.
Minister Robinson.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion be approved.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the recommittal of the item Statements by Ministers.
The question is that the item Statements by Ministers be recommitted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Statements by Ministers. Mr. Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, honorable government members, opposition members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to begin by expressing my appreciation for bearing witness to this monumental occasion. We are brought here today not by our own will, but that of the Almighty God. We have heard the different submissions from the members of this honorable House, highlighting the many issues that confront our young people today. However, Madam Speaker, before I expand on this issue, I wish to highlight the immense support from the Ministry of Education and Youth, particularly the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division, the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, and other facilitators. Most importantly, my fellow youth parliamentarians who have made it to this day, a day where Jamaica and the diaspora will hear the concerns and solutions of the future, our youth. Their hard work and commitment to the youth development have been evident. It is commendable to see these entities working together to expose youth to the processes and procedures of governance. They have made this sitting possible.
Madam Speaker, the presentations before me today have pointed to 4 pressing issues of deep concern to young people across this island. The issue of parental involvement in the lives of our children, education is worrying. Madam Speaker, we have had reports from school administrators of low attendance at PTA meetings by parents. In some cases, parents have little to no participation in any school activity that required their involvement. This issue is of great concern because it has numerous implications on our country. One of these implications, Madam Speaker, is that it can lead to juvenile delinquency. Madam Speaker, it was proposed today by one of our ministers that we adopt the public-private approach that would provide training for our parents. This would allow them to appreciate the responsibilities they have as parents and what is required of them. Far too long, Madam Speaker, our nation's children have suffered the harsh reality of people they call parents, the ones they look up to for guidance and support, failing to fulfill these responsibilities. Therefore, it should not be a case where we continue to turn the blind eye to this issue. Madam Speaker, we hope to catch the support of our parents. Government, alive? Madam Speaker, we should all be guided by these words. Mental health should not be a privilege, but rather a human right. The sentiments expressed earlier by my colleagues echoed the need for greater attention on the issue of mental health in Jamaica. I charge this government on this day, through the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, to act on the recommendations provided on the public education campaign on mental health, the amendment to the JCF curriculum to expose trainees on how to deal with psychological issues, and the destigmatization of mental health within our society. Madam Speaker, I stand here as the government Prime Minister, utilizing my platform to express that I have experienced mental health illnesses. Therefore, I am cognizant of the severe impacts of these crippling issues. Madam Speaker, based on these recommendations, I propose that we not only speak about this issue during Mental Health Month, but rather on a daily basis. Madam Speaker, if we fail to implement the proposed policies, it simply means that we are contributing to the prevalence of cognitive illness-related behaviors. Madam Speaker, instead of our youth popping Molly, we want them to pop the help they may need from these new health recommendations. Madam Speaker, we now turn our attention to the issue of sustainable housing solutions for our youth. It is the NHT's mandate to increase the stock of housing solutions to provide housing for the average Jamaican. However, Madam Speaker, you have heard the concerns of my colleagues who recommended that the NHT loan amount be increased from $6.5 to $13 million per contributor to provide Jamaicans with easier access to home ownership. In addition, Madam Speaker, recall the excellent solution presented by my fellow youth parliamentarian in response to the housing crisis faced by specifically low to medium income earners. This is a solution referred to as intermodal container housing. Madam Speaker, it is remarkable how innovative and attainable these container houses can be. The funding provided by NHT is woefully inadequate. It is just not enough, Madam Speaker. Regarding financial literacy, our young people must be equipped with the knowledge and competencies to function adequately in a world that requires financial literacy. In this regard, Madam Speaker, we must be proactive in implementing the recommendations offered by my colleagues. In doing this, Madam Speaker, we are looking out for the trying corner shop owner struggling to sustain the business that puts honest bread on his family's table. Madam Speaker, in closing, I urge this noble House to commit itself to nation building so that Jamaica may, under God, increase in beauty, fellowship and prosperity, and play our part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race.
Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, the revolutionary leader Nelson Mandela chanted these words, and I quote, "Our youth are the rock on which our future will be built, our greatest asset as a nation. They will be the leaders of our country, the creators of our national wealth, who care for and protect our people." Madam Speaker, specially invited guests, and my fellow youth parliamentarians, good afternoon. It is my esteemed pleasure to stand here today in the capacity as the leader of the opposition to ensure that the cries of our youth in our country are being heard at the highest level. Madam Speaker, it is no secret that a country that fails to protect and provide for its youth is a country that is on the wrong trajectory. Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, when most of the current leaders and professionals retire, someone must take up the mantle. Those persons, Madam Speaker, are sitting right here in this very room. They are sitting in the class by the school next door, or they may very well be sitting on the wall around the corner. However, Madam Speaker, it will be difficult for our youth to realize their full potential if the issues that they face are not addressed in a sustainable way. Our young people are being impacted by a myriad of issues that require our leaders to identify and respond with alacrity. Madam Speaker, we have identified some issues that are more prevalent for our young people. They are housing allocation, parenting and education, financial literacy, and psychological well-being. Madam Speaker, we cannot expect our youth to advance if they lack a place to live. This country has failed the youth by not providing suitable housing allocation, and we wonder why we have multiple squatter settlements across the island. Madam Speaker, it is like putting water into a leaking bucket and wondering why it is empty at the end. We must understand that when people cannot get help from their leaders, they will take matters into their own hands. Or as the older generation of Jamaicans would say, if you can't get turkey, you will settle for drunk crow. Speaker, if it is such a tedious process to receive assistance from the NHT, and at the end of the day, if the funds that you receive is not even enough to build a decent home, then what do we expect the youth to do? Madam Speaker, we, the members of the opposition, demand that the government of Jamaica desist from demolishing squatter settlements without making changes to the National Housing Trust scheme. We demand that plans be put into place to ensure that all our young people, irrespective of age, marital status, or employment status, can own their own homes comfortably and legally. Madam Speaker, I would like to turn our attention to the issue of parenting and education. And education is the most important thing that any child can access. As a matter of fact, it is the poor man's gift. Madam Speaker, can you imagine what will happen in the future if we have the new and improved generation fully done? We ought to take the necessary steps to keep our youth on the academic train. But this problem is not just a leadership problem. It's a multifaceted problem. It's a parenting problem as well. Madam Speaker, children spend most of their time at home. And we're fully aware that where work at home is stalled, failure is in full view. To prevent the detrimental effects that ignorant youths will have on our society, we, the members of the opposition, call on the government to put in place plans to ensure that parents anger them business. Madam Speaker, we demand that the government finds innovative ways to include our parents, whether by having virtual PTAs or by working with different agencies to implement specialized programs to monitor and assist our parents with their designated roles. Madam Speaker, apart from housing and allocation and the lack of parents in education, we find that our youths also suffer from the lack of financial literacy. We see where Nelson Mandela said that youth will create the nation's wealth. Now, unless we are miracle workers here in Jamaica, a young person who is a spendthrift with no knowledge of investing, budgeting, or the simple task of counting money can never be useful in that. Madam Speaker, for a developing country to be only 33% financially literate, our companies and banks are in trouble. But as a matter of fact, even the Ministry of Finance and the country's economy is in trouble. Madam Speaker, we urge the government of Jamaica to take the necessary steps to introduce financial literacy as a mandatory subject in our schools and make it a requirement to do business in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, our country is on the edge of collapsing economically. We do not need more contributors to the problem. We need to put plans in place to fix the problem. Madam Speaker, the last issue that we have heard from our speakers is that of psychological well-being. Now, Madam Speaker, we are noticing that more of our young people are struggling from different mental health issues. And this is seen in their behavioral changes or even in cases of suicide. Now, Madam Speaker, we cannot sit as a country and lose our future because we have failed to introduce proper systems to tackle or to enhance the psychological well-being of our youth. And might I add that relaxing on a bench will not solve a psychological. Madam Speaker, we, the members of the opposition, will not rest until the government creates more facilities to accommodate and treat the mental health patients and invest more capital in dealing with the emotional and mental well-being of our youth. Madam Speaker, the tagline for Youth Month 2022 is Reignited, empowering youth for Jamaica 60 and beyond. But think about it, are youth really empowered? Empowered, but you have to live in a rented house for so many years. Empowered, but your parents don't even know that you are failing. Empowered, but you are bound to live in debt. Empowered when mentally you are drained and those who are supposed to help you have failed to do so. Madam Speaker, it is high time that we get our act together. It is time that we put heads and hearts together and implement the necessary policies and infrastructure to save our country's youth.
Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that this House adjourn sine die.
The question is that the House do now adjourn sine die. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Every Jamaican has the right to know what is happening in Parliament, to know when new laws are being passed, and to give their opinions on legislation before either house.
Every Jamaican has the right to see their representatives in action, making laws, holding the executive to account, representing the people, working for the benefit of all Jamaicans.
It is your right to observe first-hand meetings of the Senate, meetings of the House of Representatives, and the meetings of parliamentary committees. You may also take a tour of your parliament.
To find out more about the Houses of Parliament, please call 876-922-0200, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, or visit our website at www.japarliament.gov.jm.